You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Check. All right, guys. Today on Reza Riffs, we got the great Adam Hunter on. Adam's a very funny comic. He's the man I call the man with 1,000 punchline tags. He's going to be joining me. Alan Lee will not be here today. He is doing the work. And I'll be interviewing Adam by myself. I was going to ask Rosie Tran. I think I actually did, but I think she said she couldn't do it. Anyways, Adam Hunter is last comic standing. He's been on Comics Unleashed, Late Night with Craig Ferguson. And he has a stand-up special that is now streaming on the UFC Fight Pass. It's called Throwing Punches. So we'll talk to Adam and see what that's like. This would be a good time to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Give us some feedback. And follow us on Instagram, Twitter, at Reza Riffs. Also follow me on Keith Reza, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. I'm doing a Facebook cleansing right now. So if you haven't engaged with me in a while, there's a good chance you've been cleansed out. Nothing personal, but yeah, I've been doing it. So if you have been cleansed out, add me again, and let's keep this going. I need to buy a live safe for my virus computer. Anyways, you could also book me on Cameo, www.cameo.com. Keith Reza. Valentine's Day is coming in, so you can book me. Adam's coming in, and we're about to talk to Adam right now. With Adam Hunter. Enjoy. Hey, what's up, Adam?
Hello.
Hey, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good. Finally got a chance to do this, huh?
Yeah, it's just it's hard because my daughter's nanny got COVID, so I had to be home all day with the baby while trying to have a career. And, it's been tough. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Did you get the COVID or no?
No, I haven't got COVID. You?
No, I haven't. I've been staying safe and wearing a mask.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing that, but I've also been doing stand-up comedy shows and, taking my kid to the park and, I haven't, it's I've been wearing a mask as much as I can, but sometimes it's just
Yeah. How are the comedy shows right now? Because I haven't done comedy in 9 months, so.
They've actually been good because the people that have been wanting to come out really want to come out, Yeah. So hard to walk anybody during COVID, or people that get offended. They're just, they're just kind of taking a chance. At the same time, I've been doing this for a long time, but some other comics that have I've seen some comics try to do COVID material, but not that comfortable with it,
Right.
And not over that well, because just because the experience isn't there, and then also you don't have 100 sets to work on it, you have 3 that may, that month or something. I've been doing about 10 live shows a month, But
you're also doing a lot of Zoom shows too.
Yeah, and a lot of Zoom shows, which are good. I mean, the good thing about Zoom shows is it's usually the same crowd keeps coming back, so it forces you to write material every single week,
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about your special Throwing Punches, which is on the UFC Fight Pass. That's a kind of unusual place to have a special, isn't it?
Yeah. I've been working, I used to work for the UFC. I'm doing videos for them. I've been writing the MMA awards for 13 years, and MMA is a huge passion of mine. I coach wrestling. I love MMA, and I have a MMA podcast, and I have all these MMA jokes. So, I'm friends with Dana White, and I pitched the idea to have a comedy special, and he was like, let's do it. So it was the first comedy special ever on UFC Fight Pass. And it was good because I did about, 25 minutes of like regular stuff, and then another 25 minutes of or 20 minutes of jokes about fighters and MMA that like I really can't do in clubs, because unless everyone is an MMA expert, they're not gonna know what I'm talking about. So that was really good. The hard part was actually preparing for it though. Like having time to because I had to do the shows on Zoom. I had to practice in like parking lots shows, or shows where everyone was wearing masks. And that was another thing about the special that I kind of wish, everyone in the crowd was wearing masks. So while I could hear the laughter, it wasn't like a regular comedy club where, the laughs go through you.
Yeah.
I just had, but I definitely could hear laughter, but it just wasn't as and also it was a room that held 200 people and they had 40 there, but it was still like an amazing experience. And I loved every minute of it. And now I'm working on the next one.
Sometimes like when rooms that only hold 200, like those clubs are more intimate, and I find those to be more fun than like 500 or 600 shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends. Like, I'd rather have 20 people that want to be there than 100 people that are there for a Christmas party or something, and they just have to be there, So it really depends. It's just a lot of times one of my favorite clubs is in Vegas at the LA Comedy Club, because they have super low ceilings. It only holds 100 people, but you don't want to have sometimes like a huge arena with like 20 people there. That's when it gets kind of hard, because the room that was built for Metallica, and there's 20 people, but it is what it is, man. I mean, I've been doing comedy for almost 23, 24, 25 years now. And I've had every experience from 2 people in the crowd to 5,000 to getting, booed off stages to getting standing ovations. So it's just, it's one of those things about comedy is that you can't buy into it. It's not one of those jobs that you could be like, oh, I have X amount of money and now I'm this. And there's really no experience like experience. Like, I can tell people all they want about comedy and, comic theory and what it's like and this and that. But unless you've actually been there and experienced it, you kind of don't know what to do. And even if you have experience, you still don't know what to do. I mean, how many times have I done comedy where I'm like, oh, that would have been perfect had I not said this, or had I not went this far, had that. And it's all learning, but that's the thing, is it's just not being thrown by uncomfortable situations. Unfortunately, the only way to do that is to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And, people tell me all the time, like, I have fighters that tell me, hey, I want to become a comic, but I don't want to bomb, or how much money can I make? Or, when do I start getting paid? Or I want to be good. And I'm like, well, that's like saying I want to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I never want to be tapped, or I never want to lose a match, or I never want to lose a role. It's like, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. There's nobody in the history of jiu-jitsu or wrestling or anything or boxing that's never lost a round or gotten knocked down. You just can't do it.
Now, you also run a couple comedy rooms, or at least you used to. But the question I had for you is that same advice when new comics would say, hey, Adam, can I do your room? And they weren't well enough to get paid or whatever. When did you say, hey, listen, you gotta do these steps in order, you know what I'm saying?
I'm usually bad at saying no to people, because I know how hard it was to get on stage, and I still have animosity towards people that didn't give me spots in the beginning when you need them. I remember being in New York and be like, hey, can I do this room? And the guy's like, oh, well, I only put out comics that are past the clubs. And my thought was if you're past the clubs, why would you want to do this room?
Exactly.
So why not give? So I always try to give. I mean, I've had people do my Zoom shows for the first time ever doing comedy on my Zoom shows. The tricky part is usually when someone starts and they're terrible, they rather than say, okay, I'm going to sit back and watch and learn and do some open mics before I come back to that room, a lot of people go, oh, give me a chance to redeem myself. So now I'm in it for 2 spots, you know,
right.
or or hey, you know, like they don't realize how bad they bombed or how no one was laughing. It's like anything else, but I'm working this year on getting better at saying no to people, at not caring as much if people like me. That's always been like my Achilles heel. I think even in stand-up comedy, I think one of my problems as a comic, if I had to like pick apart things that I could have done better, was I always wanted to kill. I always wanted to do well. So I didn't take as many chances as I probably could have. I didn't like do as many sets where I bombed. I always wanted to be the funniest guy on every show. And looking back, that probably hurt me because I didn't take as many risks. I didn't do as much new stuff as I probably could have, you know, so that's something that as the good part about doing Zoom shows is it doesn't really matter if you bomb.
Right.
Because sort of like everybody bombs. Yeah. I mean, nobody's getting a development deal off a Zoom show.
Zoom comic standing.
Yeah, and like and also right. And then nobody's saying it's almost like you bomb if you do your regular bits. That's sort of like amongst comics, you're like, really? You know, like that, like you're really doing the joke that you've done for 20 years on this show. Like, so that in some regards, like the pandemic's helped me because it's forced me to just write a bunch of new shit. And also because if you're not dealing with what's going on right now in the world and telling it on stage, you're like, well, how is this not comedy? Like, how could I not, even if I just talk, even if there are no jokes at all in my set, like I have to deal with what's in front of me.
Yeah.
You know?
And like another thing is like you're I want to say you're the master of tags. Like every joke you have a lot of good tags. So that's good writing.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember just being early on in comedy, going to the Comedy Cellar and seeing the Dave Attell's and the Jim Nortons and the Pete Correales and the Russ Beneves and these Godfrey and these monsters. And I remember like having at that time I had a lot longer setups. So I would go, 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences, punchline. 1, 2, 3, 4 punch, Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why am I not getting as many laughs as these people? And then I realized, because with these people, you don't even know when the joke starts and when it ends. Like they have so many tags. And I also realized that the hardest thing in the world is to get that first laugh. It's like, to me, getting that first laugh is like taking a huge boulder and lifting it up a mountain. I'm sorry that I'm like, my daughter has like friends. My daughter has like friends coming over now, and my wife will literally kill me if the place is messy. So I'm actually like sweeping the floor.
Yeah, because, I see that. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's cool that you're still doing this while doing chores. I thank you for that.
Oh, no problem. So the thing is, I know we'll still get really upset if like, which is crazy because they're just her friends gonna come over and they're gonna destroy the place, But we have to. So literally, if I did nothing, it would look exactly like it is now. But for some reason, I have to clean up for them to destroy it.
And then you have to do it again when they leave.
Right, 1,000%, 1,000%. But anyway, so getting that boulder up the mountain is the hardest part. Once you get it rolling, I find it's a lot easier. So tags are great because the ball's already rolling, And also, to me, like comedy's. Well, I don't want to be that old guy that's like bitter about and like who doesn't like want to evolve that guy, But to me, it used to be whoever had the most laughs on a show was probably the funniest comic. Right. You could make the argument of like, well, how is he getting those laughs? I mean, there are people up there with like dick puppets that are killing, and if you have a dick puppet versus your Dave Chappelle and the dick puppet guy's getting more laughs, but let's just say everyone's on the same playing field, right? As far as quality of material, and then one guy gets 100 laughs in 5 minutes, the other guy gets 4. I would say the 100 guy is the better comic. Now, then you can go, well, how hard are they laughing? Well, okay, fine. Let's maybe, if they're laughing just as hard than the guy with 100. So I always felt that, when I first started doing comedy, I didn't look like most comics. I think I wouldn't say I was better looking, but I was in better shape. Let's say I'm better in shape. I was like, sort of like comics where it looked like they had been like like they should be like they just had like cigarettes and they look like they hadn't worked out in years and they're kind of angry and you're like, oh, this guy's gonna be funny because he's like out of shape and miserable, right? And that wasn't something me, so I was always like, well, I better have good material because you could hate me because of my face, you hate me because of my person, hate my look, but you still have to like the jokes, you know. So I always thought that like having as many jokes per minute was extremely important, and I still think that, you know. I hate you know, getting the crowd ready to laugh and only having like one punchline because I can almost sense their disappointment of like, that's it, you know. It's just sort of getting one present for Christmas, you know. So I try to have as many tags as possible, but then you could also sometimes too many tags where now the joke isn't believable anymore, and you've taken away the reality of the bit. So you kind of have to be careful. And then also not fall into the fact of like easy tags, you know, because there's always like kind of easy tags of like, you know, you just switch the gender of the person and like the joke or something, you know. So that could be quality tags.
And also like a lot of celebrities go to your show. I remember when I did the Irvine Improv with you last year. I want to say it was Tito Ortiz, but there was also another guy. They went to the show and they were in the back. Do you remember who that was? They were in the back.
It was Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah.
A lot of fighters come to my shows. You know, I'm friends with a lot of fighters. I support a lot of fighters. I also get a lot of fighters on my podcast and try to hype them up when like nobody's talking about them. So when they are like big stars, a lot of them don't forget. You know, I think that fighters are a lot like comedians, in which we're people that almost like refuse to grow up. We're following our dreams. We're not making a lot of money for a long time. We're sacrificing the most or a lot, whether it be relationships, money, stability, you know, friendships. So, and we're putting a lot into it. So I think there's a lot of similarities between comics and fighters. And, you know, that I got nothing but respect for fighters and for any athlete, really. But unlike, let's say, basketball players or, you know, football players or whoever, fighters, unfortunately, don't have like the, you know, once you make the UFC or whoever, you don't get the $30 million signing bonus.
Right.
You know, you don't get the, you don't, fortunately for me, you also don't get the people telling you like any interview has to go through me, you know. So I actually get access to a lot of people that I wouldn't necessarily get access to if, let's say, I was just an NFL football fan, you know.
Right. Yeah. But does that like because like I get like freaked out when celebrities are in the audience, you know. I do better when I don't know they're in the audience. How does that like work with you?
I mean, sometimes, yeah, you never, I mean, there have been nights where I've had fighters come to my shows where I'm like, hey, you know, I've seen you have bad nights too.
Yeah.
So let's, you know, so there's that. I think that if you're a fan of mine or you're coming to my show, a lot of times people don't care if the rest of the crowd's not laughing. You know, I care. There's definitely like that pressure sometimes for me that like, let's say the person came and saw me like 2 months ago. I don't want to do the same act that they saw 2 months ago, but now I'm going to do like a whole new act for this one person when I know that like 99 people out of 100 in the crowd didn't see the act. You know, so there's always that of like, a lot of times I throw in new bits for one person who doesn't even care, you know, and then there's like, you know, me going, you know, and also like a lot of them believe me. Like, you know, if I say I had a bad set or I suck, they'll believe me, you know, even if I did well. So there's always a little bit of pressure, you know, to do better because, you know, the fighter's in the room or something, you know?
Well, how is that like? You've been doing it for 23 years. How much material would you say? I know you have an hour. Would you say you have at least 2 hours?
Yeah, probably 2.5, 3 hours. When I used to do cruise ships, you had to do at least, you know, you have to do at least an hour and a half because you have to have 2 different dirty shows and then one different clean show. But then you'd work with a guy that was like, because you do 5 shows, who would be like, just so you know, I don't repeat a joke, and he'd be like the cowboy.
He always repeats it. Yeah.
No, he never repeats it. But he's doing like songs or dance contests or something, and like, yeah, I would repeat jokes too if I had, you know, a crowd member come on the crowd and tell a story with his arm underneath my armpit or whatever, like that improv thing that people did. But but I used to do about 4.5 shows. I would always have trouble at the very end, like that last show, because the same crowd keeps coming back.
Oh, okay.
And then they'll tell you like, and then you're like, man, let's say I have like my 5 best jokes in the first show. Do I repeat those? People who haven't seen it, and then people go, oh, I've seen this set before. And then it was always hard. And so those were always tough, you know, to be honest. But I would say I'd have about 2.5, 3 hours of material.
Yeah. I would say I have an hour, only because I have an hour special, but I don't perform an hour all the time. I usually get that 20, 30-minute spot, which I find I'm very happy being a feature act. A lot of comics, they're always like in a rush to be a headliner. I'm just happy being the middle guy.
Yeah, I mean, happy until the money comes in. You know? Yeah, I was happy too until I would, you know, break even or lose money on the gig. So that's like, you know, you do the road and you're a feature. I mean, sometimes I was getting $300 for the week, but I have to fly myself out there, you know.
Right.
So it's like you're literally breaking even.
Yeah,
and then you don't want to do too well because then the headliner gets upset, or you've had headliners, they say, don't do crowd work, or they go, you know, hey man, you know, just so you know, I talk about sex. You're like, huh? Like, you know.
Have you ever had a headliner tell you don't do well?
I had them complain to the booker that I was too dirty, or that yeah, of course. I never had them say don't do well, but I've had them. But I used to fuck with features. If I had like this black comic came in, and I was like, hey man, just so you know, I do a lot of black jokes. So don't do any black jokes. And the guy looked at me about to cry. I was like, I'm kidding, dude. I'm just like, you know.
I don't know if you remember Rick Martinez, but I did a lot of his shows, and when I first started, I would say I had a good 7 minutes, like killer, and then the rest was just terrible, you know? And he would always tell me not to do well, and I was just like, you know what, dude? I think you're a creep anyway. I'll still do well. You know what I mean? Like,
why would he say don't do well?
Because, you know, Rick Martinez, he was like hacky.
Dude, that dude, if he would have had like a reality show following his life, he'd be like the biggest comic in the world. I mean, his like on stage, yeah, I get it. I think he would focus way more on getting people to the show than the show itself. But that dude was hilarious. Like, he would literally go on Facebook and find people that lived in a town and be like, hey, remember me? I sat next to you in 4th grade. And then I have a comedy show. And people would show up, but he never even went to that school or was even from that town. And then he had like 7 girlfriends, and they would all bring like 20 people at the same show.
That's ballsy.
Dude, it was unbelievable. I kind of loved him for that. I mean, I would never do that, but I was like, man, this dude is like operating on it. What happened to him? He's still doing comedy?
No, I haven't seen him in about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
But he also did have a bad rep of, other stuff, which I'm not saying I personally saw, but I heard, you know?
Oh no, he was crazy, but I kind of liked him. He one time he got so drunk that he got into a fight with the Irvine Improv or Brea, the manager, and then he wanted me to like call them up and yell at them. I'm like, dude, like what? No. Like, and then if you got paid, you had to like wait like an hour or two. Then he'd be like, meet me at the ATM like 3 blocks down. So then, and like he'd be wearing a different outfit, and like he was so funny, man. Like he was beyond funny. Funny.
Do you do that like that stuff to your features when you take them on the road, like play little pranks on them like that?
No, I don't do that. Like, I mean, no, I never did that. I heard a funny story though that like this guy that was opening for Sinbad, he told me that he was opening for Sinbad, and he had to be totally clean. And then his friend was a stripper who came to the show, dressed up as a nun. And then during the show, she kept flashing him her vagina, like in the front row. And Sinbad was like, it was like a theater, and he was just like shocked, like 6 times she flashed. And then at the end, he went backstage. He goes, "So you're never gonna guess what happened? There was a nun flat," and then he told him that was his friend, and he laughed for like. He said he hired him like 10 years later because he remembered him from the guy who hired the nun. He had him right for his show.
I saw Sinbad live, and he was very clean. He did like an hour and a half of clean, actually. And,
yeah, he's a very underrated comic. I don't understand like these people. It's like everybody just loves somebody. Like everyone just picks somebody to love. Whether it be like, you know, Coolio or like Sinbad or like MC Hammer or like Johnny from the Karate Kid, you know, William Zabka. And then everyone like just like forgets about the person. Like they're like, okay, but not even to the point where it's like they have sort of a middle, like they just totally forget about them.
Yeah.
And then they like, but it's not like they weren't amazing or they don't have like incredible like talent. I mean, MC Hammer, and I still support all these guys. I love going to the like MC Hammer or like these like throwback concerts. And I would go see Sinbad if he was, you know, in the town where I'm at. Like, why wouldn't I do that? I just, I don't really get it. How like everyone just loves the person and they just like move on, you know?
Do you find you're at the point of in your career where like when you go to comedy shows, you want to be performing instead of watching? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's hard for me to go actually support. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I definitely would.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.